Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Whew. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
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 Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Deo, Deo.
Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake is all go down. Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake is all go down. Corrosion to her thighs, erosion of her pride. Baby's got a shooter, baby's got corrosion now, baby's got it.
Baby does got it. Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, February 27th. Is that right? Let's check the old calendar here. I think so. Yes. Tomorrow being the last day of February, if you're into that sort of thing. And then March begins, the Ides of March. 2 weeks after that, if you know your Roman history. Yes, 36 degrees here in, it says 46. Does that say 46? It says 40. I think my little temperature ticker thing down there might be wrong, but it's okay. It's chilly, so everything's groovy. Let's say hi to everybody. We're on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Still trying to get live on Substack. That seems to be who is this? Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill, and he gets about 2 feet up, and then the thing rolls back down on him. So we'll keep trying if that's a thing. But in any event, we'll have the link to the show in the Substack after the show today, along with the links to all the show items, the stories that we'll be covering today. And that'll all be in there for you. We got Miss Laine P up in here. What's up, Lainey? Good to see you. Mystery. It took me a while to figure out that your name is a play on words, mystery, or maybe I'm totally making that up, but I think that's what that means. Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show, intergalactic, floating in the skies above, hopefully wreaking some havoc on some Elmo satellites up there. CBC voter in the house, got your cup of coffee, you ready to rock and roll? Very good. And if you're just lurking, keep on lurking. We appreciate you nonetheless. We got a lot of news to get to today. I know there's, I'm not really going to cover it, but apparently Hillary Clinton testified yesterday on the Epstein files and said basically nothing. So just in case you were deathly afraid of not knowing that knowledge, now you know. You didn't need you didn't need a whole hour of it. Of course, the State of the Union was Tuesday night too. Trump talking a lot of shit, people yelling back at him. It was just drama. It's usually those things are just boring and the president just lies to you about stuff. But this was just boring but with more bullshit attached to it. And I don't even watch those things anymore. Apparently, it was the longest State of the Union ever. You just more shit to not listen to. So, Steve Wolfbrand, what's up? In the house. Good to see you. All my peeps over here on YouTube. And like I said, if you're lurking over there on Rumble or on Facebook, good morning to you. Hopefully you got yourself a nice little cup of coffee or tea, whatever you're in, whatever your morning beverage is. I like drinking gasoline. Gets the body going till they have to cart me off to the hospital. Yeah, longest verbal turd transmitted into space. Bingo. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Iran's the evil devil. Although we're murdering our own citizens. He failed to mention that. They murdered their own citizens. A lot of dumb shit. A lot of dumb politicians. Speaking of dumb politicians, our vice president and Dr. Oz teaming up for fuckery in Minnesota. Let's get to it. Despicable. Vance Oz announced freeze on some Medicaid funding for Minnesota. VP J.D. Vance said Wednesday that the Trump administration will pause some Medicaid funding for Minnesota over fraud concerns without offering any guarantees that the suspension will not adversely impact the more than 1 million Minnesotans who depend upon the key health care program. We're announcing today that we have decided to temporarily halt certain amounts of Medicaid funding that is going to the state of Minnesota in order to ensure that the state of Minnesota takes its obligation seriously to be good stewards of the American people's tax money. I don't know, that's not Vance's voice, but anybody named JD sounds like they have like a cowboy hat and spit into a spittoon, you know, ding. Fuckhead said at a White House press conference, with Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator and total TV hack, Mehmet Oz, also known as Dr. Oz. Now, what is this going to mean? Vance continued. What this means is, first of all, the providers on the ground in Minnesota have actually already been paid. What we're doing is we are stopping the federal payments that go to the state government until the state government takes its obligations seriously to stop the fraud that's being perpetrated. To which Minnesota responded, well, maybe don't murder our people, and we'll take some of what you say seriously. So this is from Kelly on the tweeters. Broadway Baby 2. Oh, that's her Blue Sky social. Okay. They already targeted SNAP in Minnesota. They killed 2 Minnesotans and injured or kidnapped hundreds more. Now they're stealing their Medicaid. They're going to deny people health care because of a YouTube video about a Somali daycare scam that wasn't even true. Allegedly. I watched the James Lee video about that. Apparently there was some shenanigans going on, but not nearly to the extent, obviously, that the Republicans were making it out to be. Oz demanded that Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz determine who these providers are, make sure they're not already in trouble for doing bad stuff, and then reevaluate all the current providers to make sure they're supposed to be able to provide these services. Hey, Ellen. Good to see you. Wait, where's Ellen? Ellen's not on here? Oh, there you are. I see you. I see you. You fooled me. You're on YouTube. You're usually on the Facebooks. And we got Bella in the house, too. What's up? Good to see you, my friends. Your morning drink is wild turkey. Wild turkey couldn't drag me away. Sorry. That's not the song. Responding to Oz's remarks, Gaia Leadership Project founder Elizabeth Cronus McLaughlin said on Blue Sky, so Minnesota is supposed to review every appointment by a Medicaid recipient with every doctor to get funds already lawfully allocated to the state. Asked by a reporter how he intends to ensure that the funding pause doesn't impact the people who are enrolled in Medicaid, Vance said he is worried about the justice of it all. Again, 2 people murdered. There's no justice for them. I think it's offensive that American taxpayers pay into these programs and they're defrauded. And it's easily sad that American children who need these services are unable to get them because they're going to fraudsters, Vance replied. Well, you could say the military is a fraud too. They're supposed to bring peace around the world, and all they do is reinforce empire and cause war and death. I don't want my tax dollars, even though my tax dollars don't go fund the federal stuff, but, you know, look up MMT. It's a beautiful thing. But still, you know the thing. Who's this? Look, we're certainly going to make sure that our anti-fraud efforts go after the fraudsters and not after anybody who actually benefits from these services, he lied through his teeth. But I actually think the question is a little off in a way, because the problem is not going after the fraud. The problem is that these programs are being defrauded to begin with. Who is this? Our social safety net will disappear unless we take fraud more seriously, added the vice president, whose boss, Trumpy, last year signed into law the biggest cuts to Medicaid and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, in the nation's history as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That's like saying, I believe in abiding by the law, and then you shoot somebody for no reason, as you say it. Medicaid is, I almost did the Vance voice, sorry. Medicaid is once you get into that Vance voice, boy, it's hard to get out of because it's kind of fun, you know, if you want to be all country talking. Medicaid is the primary health care safety net for lower income Americans, with nearly 70 million people enrolled nationwide at the end of last year. While federal prosecutors are investigating Minnesota's Medicaid system, specifically 14 high-risk service programs such as housing support and personal care services, on suspicion of billions of dollars in fraudulent billing since 2018, and dozens of people have been convicted of stealing public money through the state social services system. Critics noted that Congress, not the president, has the power of the purse. Some observers noted that Trump has already targeted Minnesota, which voted against him all 3 times he ran for president, with his deadly crackdown on undocumented immigrants and their defenders and racist attacks on Somali immigrants, including Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. The Medicaid freeze follows the Trump administration's $10 billion cut in federal child care funding to 5 Democrat-led states, including Minnesota, last month, a move that opponents argue punishes working families who committed no fraud. What do they call that? Collective punishment? University of Illinois professor Nicholas Grossman called the Medicaid pause taxation without representation. The Constitution clearly gives Congress the power to spend taxpayer funds, and no law allows the president to halt if he feels some U.S. states aren't being, quote, good stewards, quote, of the money, he said on Blue Sky. In case there's any confusion on this, the Impoundment Control Act forbids it. The people of Minnesota vote for representatives to Congress, Grossman added. Minnesota representatives and senators were in D.C. representing their constituents when Congress passed laws using proper procedure that allocated Medicaid funding. The president breaking those laws violates the fundamental compact of the republic. Oz on Wednesday also announced a six-month national moratorium blocking all new enrollments for durable medical equipment, prosthesis, orthotics, supplies across the board in the name of fighting fraud. The move targets suppliers, not individual Medicaid beneficiaries. This from Oz, a promoter of privatized Medicare Advantage programs, which are notorious for overcharging taxpayers and denying patients necessary care. The CMS under Oz increased federal funding for Medicare Advantage plans by more than $25 billion for 2026. Interesting, isn't it? Yes, it is. As Common Dreams recently reported, United Health Group, UHG, one of the country's largest for-profit health insurance companies, has been the leading beneficiary of a long-running Medicare Advantage fraud scheme that the Medicare Payment Advisory Commission, an independent nonpartisan legislative branch agency, warned could cost U.S. taxpayers $1.2 trillion over the next decade. Some critics said that if Trump really cared about fraud, he'd go after companies like UHG and stop pardoning so many convicted criminals who committed billions of dollars worth of fraud. These guys are despicable, Michigan State University professor Brendan Cantwell said Wednesday in response to Vance and Oz's announcement. Robert Weissman, co-president of the consumer advocacy group Public Citizen, said in a statement Wednesday that Medicaid fraud is a serious problem that requires cracking down on fraudsters, not patients. It's kind of like you have election fraud, but you don't. You have way more election fraud than you have voter fraud, which is a totally different thing. Weissman continued, this administration's anti-fraud rhetoric is itself a fraud. In fact, the administration has gutted anti-fraud government agencies and programs and let fraudsters off the hook. It has issued record-breaking pardons to fraudsters, sought to eliminate the most important anti-consumer fraud agency, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, eviscerated the Corps of Inspectors General, whose job is to root out waste, fraud, and abuses, and drop dozens of fraud and fraud-related investigations against large corporations. But Minnesota! The Trump administration's suspension of Medicaid funding in Minnesota is a bad faith, punitive, and shameful measure that will punish people in Minnesota as part of the same deceptive story that the Trump administration has told to justify the outrageous ICE invasion of the state, Weissman added. So, Minnesota. When it rains, it pours. Or I guess there, when it snows, it piles up. And I'm sure Minnesota's not going to be the only state that gets targeted as this progresses, too. So, speaking of fraud, sorry, folks, parks closed. As we go to Wally World, Walmart agrees to $100 million settlement for allegedly deceiving Arizona customers and drivers. That's right. The asterisk means we fraud people. Walmart has agreed to a $100 million settlement over allegations of misleading drivers and customers in its Spark Driver program. The settlement, involving Attorney General Chris Mays, a bipartisan group of attorneys general, and the Federal Trade Commission, that's the FTC, addresses claims that Walmart deceived participants about pay and tips. According to the Arizona Attorney General's office, the settlement was reached on February 26, which was yesterday, I believe. Yeah, was that yesterday? Walmart's Spark Driver program, operating since 2018, allows customers to order home deliveries via the Spark app, with drivers picking up and delivering products from Walmart stores. Mays emphasized the importance of fairness in the transaction, saying, when customers leave a tip, they expect it to reach the worker who earned it. When workers are promised pay, they expect to receive it. In theory, yeah. Mays said this agreement aims to rectify these issues by ensuring drivers receive their due compensation. The settlement resolves accusations that Walmart misrepresented pay amounts, including base pay and tips to drivers. It was alleged that Walmart altered orders post-acceptance, resulting in reduced earnings for the drivers. Well, that's scummy. In additionally, it was claimed that the company misled customers about the allocation of their tips. As part of the settlement, Walmart will pay or has paid up to $79 million directly to drivers, with an additional $11 million to the states and $10 million to the FTC. Of course, they got to get their cut. The company is also required to implement an earnings verification program and submit annual reports to the FTC for the next decade. Walmart is prohibited from modifying orders after acceptance or misrepresenting driver earnings. The settlement involves the FTC and attorneys general from several states, including Colorado, Illinois, Michigan, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Utah, and Wisconsin. So that comes to you live from News 4 Tucson, KVOA. Your news for Tucson. Yeah. Surprised? No. And I'm sure Walmart's not the only company that's doing that bullshit too. You know, a lot of these, probably these bigger companies too. Tips. People's tips. Come on. Bad enough the wages suck. Yeah, fuck with their tips too. Kansas, being Kansas informs trans residents their driver's licenses become invalid this yesterday. It says Thursday, but that means yesterday. Transgender Kansans are being informed of a new state law going into effect that their driver's licenses will be considered invalid as of this week. Please note that the legislature did not include a grace period for updating credentials. That means once the law is officially enacted, your current credentials will be invalid immediately, and you may be subject to additional penalties if you are operating a vehicle without a valid credential. Red letters mailed by the Kansas Department of Revenue's Vehicles Division, dated Monday. Some transgender Kansans interviewed by the Star, that's the outfit that's doing this story, said they had received the letters. Others who have changed the gender markers on their driver's licenses, state IDs, and birth certificates said they had not yet received notification from KDOR as of Wednesday evening. KDOR, the Kansas Department of Revenue. That's what that was. Okay. Like KDOR. Iridescent Riffle, a transgender woman with a, or is that rifle? A transgender woman with a Kansas driver's license who lives in Grandview and commutes to work in Lawrence said she hasn't received a letter yet. I don't want to get a misdemeanor just trying to go to work, said Riffle, who changed the letter on her license from M to F in 2023, shortly before Attorney General Chris Kobach's legal intervention forced KDOR to stop accommodating such requests for more than 2 years. I'm salaried, I'm not working hourly, and not everyone has that same privilege as me, said Riffle, who got approval from her boss to work remotely until she figures out how to drive legally in Kansas. Pursuant to the new law, if the gender/sex indication on the face of your current credential does not match your sex assigned at birth, you are directed to surrender your current credential to the Kansas Division of Vehicles, reads the letter, which the Star reviewed multiple copies of. Upon surrendering the credential, you will be issued a new credential reflecting the gender identification consistent with statutory requirements, it continues. If you have any questions regarding procedures for obtaining a legally compliant credential, please contact KDOV or visit your local driver licensing office. SB 244, which Republican supermajorities in the Kansas legislature voted last week to enact into law over Governor Laura Kelly's veto, will go into effect on Thursday, like I said yesterday, upon the publication of the Kansas Register. The legislation provides no funding to help people who need to replace their licenses. Kansas driver's license typically costs around $30, which is bullshit. You really shouldn't have to pay for a driver's license or a state ID. But a KDOR spokesperson said in an email Thursday evening that the agency is only charging $8 to reissue valid licenses. Only $8. You still got to pay something. The state search website that allows people to check the status of their license still shows some people's licenses as active. That won't be the case for long for anyone who previously changed the gender on their license, said KDOR spokesperson Zachary Denny. The KDOR driver's license status check page accurately reflects KDOR's, it sounds like a radio station, KDOR. Internal system and what law enforcement entities will see if they check a license, Denny said in an email. The system is being updated, and as it is, the status check website will reflect changes made within the system. In addition to invalidating transgender residents' state identification documents, the new law will require people in government-owned buildings to use restrooms and other multi-occupancy private spaces in accordance with their sex assigned at birth. So are they going to, before somebody goes into a bathroom, are they going to check their ID to make sure that they're... Yeah. The persecution is the point, said Representative Abby Boatman, a Wichita Democrat and the only transgender member of the legislature who received the KDOR notice on Wednesday. Zachary Denny, a spokesperson for KDOR, said in an email Thursday morning that the agency does not plan to contact affected credential holders virtually to inform them that their driver's licenses and birth certificates have been invalidated, but the agency is working to update its website with relevant information, he said. Our best way to reach those affected by the bill is via mail, which is how we contact drivers in any situation where the status of their credentials has changed, Denny said. We are working to notify those individuals as quickly as possible to ensure they have sufficient time to visit a DL office. Well, shouldn't they have done this weeks ago, or waited to do this thing until they've notified everybody? That's when you can't, you want to drive around with an invalid driver's license. A representative from the governor's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. It's all happening very quickly, and my heart is broken for anyone who this is directly impacting, said Jay Moyer, an LGBTQ plus activist who serves as a member of the Johnson County Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coalition. This bill that the Republicans forced through the legislature so quickly is doing nothing but causing a problem that doesn't exist. It's clearly something they've wanted to do for a long time, and it's at the expense of members of marginalized communities, Moyer said. Last month, the spokesperson for the Kansas Department of Revenue, KDOR, told the Star that the agency had processed 159 gender changes on IDs since a district court injunction was lifted in October. 159 out of the whole state. Officials say they expect around 1,800 people to have their identity documents revoked. Jessie Lawson, a transgender woman who lives in Wichita and received notification of her driver's license being revoked on Wednesday, said she's deeply worried about the restroom component of the new law, provision that received no public hearing. Anyone found to have improperly used a restroom or other private space in a government building would face a written warning for a first violation. A second violation would carry a $1,000 fine, and each subsequent violation would be a misdemeanor offense punishable by another fine and up to 6 months in jail. So you're in jail, and one of the people, and there's, what are you in for? I shit in the wrong bathroom. Anyone who believes someone used the wrong restroom in their presence could file a complaint seeking $1,000. This whole deputization thing, it turns Kansas residents into Dog the Bounty Hunter, Lawson said. So now I have to worry about people watching me walk into the ladies' room and then, they're going to call in a $1,000 bounty on me. That is just so wrong on so many levels. I have several trans male friends, she said. You cannot tell by looking at them. They've got like Moses-level beards going on, and this law is putting them in the ladies' room. It's completely insane. Republicans framed the bathroom and driver's license bill as an addendum, clarifying the intent of a separate 2023 bill barring trans women from accessing female-only spaces. Lawson said Republican lawmakers and officials who rushed the anti-trans bill through without a public discussion need to confront the realities of what its implementation means. I would love to sit down with Kobach and say, this is the person you're damaging, Lawson said. I just want to be peaceful. I want to be happy. I want to pursue life without having to look over my fucking shoulder. Yeah. So, I don't have a dog in the hunt, but I know trans people, so I have empathy for them, and to see people go through this kind of bullshit. Kansas is like ultra conservative. How they got a Democratic governor is beyond me, unless the Democrat is ultra conservative too, which would make total sense. But this seems like another intimidation tactic. That Kansas is not the only one, the only state. The Kansas is just, their laws are a little more intense, we should say, as opposed to others. So we'll keep looking into this. I'm sure there's going to be some other states that are doing the same fuckery to just a handful of people, right? Yeah. Exactly. Hey, what's up, Gang.Film? Good to see you, buddy. And Cooper Duper's in the house. Very good. Good to see you. Meanwhile, speaking of fraud and breaking the law and Judas Priest, well, not Judas Priest, the IRS broke the law approximately 42,695 times in giving DHS data. Bum, bum, bum. A federal judge has found that the IRS violated federal law approximately 42,695 times when it shared confidential taxpayer addresses with immigration enforcement officials last summer. Oh, if you didn't hate the IRS more, I don't know what to tell you. This puts it over the top. U.S. District Judge Colleen Collar-Catelli issued the ruling Thursday as part of ongoing litigation over a data sharing arrangement between the IRS and the Department of Homeland Security. Federal law requires that before the IRS hands over a taxpayer's address, a requesting agency must first provide the IRS with the name and address of the person it's looking for. The requirement exists to ensure that the government can access confidential tax records only for individuals it has already specifically identified. The ruling finds that DHS did not follow this law. The judge wrote that the vast majority of the nearly 47,300 taxpayer addresses the IRS shared with ICE in August were disclosed without the IRS confirming that ICE provided a valid address for the person whose records it was seeking. Oopsie sauce! The IRS violated the Internal Revenue Code approximately almost 43,000 times by disclosing last known taxpayer addresses to ICE. Without confirming that ICE's request set forth the address of the taxpayer with respect to whom the requested return information related, the judge's opinion stated. The case is now before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, where the government is appealing Collar-Catelli's November order that blocked the data sharing agreement. The Washington Post reported that the IRS had improperly shared confidential tax information of thousands of individuals with immigration enforcement officials. That report was confirmed by a subsequent court filing by Dottie A. Rome, the IRS's chief risk and control officer. Pretty sure that person's getting fired or promoted, probably. Failing upward. DHS officials have defended the data sharing agreement as necessary to crack down on illegal immigration. A blanket statement indeed. Information sharing across agencies is essential to identify who is in our country, including violent criminals, determine what public safety and terror threats may exist so we can neutralize them, scrub these individuals from voter rolls. Keep that in mind. Keep them off the voter rolls. And identify what public benefits these aliens are using at taxpayer expense. Failing to note that a lot of these, quote, illegal aliens are paying taxes. Remember? Taxpayer advocates have raised concerns about the data sharing agreement since it began. Romo's declaration stated that in thousands of cases, ICE's requests contain addresses that were incomplete, featuring entries such as failed to provide, unknown address, or simply NA, nah. In one case, it said fuck off. In other cases, addresses were missing street names or street numbers. In still others, ICE listed jails, detention facilities, or prisons as the taxpayer's address without including the building's street location. In Thursday's opinion, the judge used pointed language to describe the IRS's verification standard. Under the government's process, she wrote, ICE could have submitted a request with an address like don't care 12345 or simply 00000. First time I read that, I thought it said ooh, and still received a taxpayer's home address from the agency. A Treasury Department spokesman did not return a request for comment. This confirms what we've been saying all along, that the IRS has an unlawful policy that violates the Internal Revenue Code's protections by releasing these addresses in a way that violates the law's requirements, said Nina Olson, founder of the Center for Taxpayer Rights, which has sued the government over the disclosures. Olson emphasized that there was no precedent to her knowledge of a judge finding tens of thousands of simultaneous violations of federal law regarding taxpayer confidentiality. I don't know of any opinion about the IRS like this, she added. The kinds of mass requests that are coming in are unprecedented. Yeah, so the IRS and DHS in cahoots. Who'd have thunk it? Right? And what was this said? Where's it said that? Oh yeah, don't care 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. I used to live there. That was a great place because they didn't care. So come on, don't be a silly Billy. There we go. More fuckery. If you're up for it. U.S. judge rules Trump policy of third country deportations unlawful. See, that's the thing, and this has just been the trend. Trump does some dumb executive order shit, and then people take him to court over it. So most of the time it gets overturned, sometimes it doesn't. So he's like throwing spaghetti at the wall, see if it sticks or not. A U.S. federal judge has ruled that the administration of Donald J. the Duck Trump had violated the law through the swift deportation of migrants to countries other than their own without giving them an opportunity to appeal their removal. U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy declared the policy invalid on Wednesday, teeing up a possible appeal from the DHS to the Supreme Court. It is not fine, nor is it legal, Murphy wrote in his decision, adding that migrants could not be sent to an unfamiliar and potentially dangerous country without any legal recourse. He added that due process, the right to receive fair legal proceedings, you remember that old legend of fair legal proceedings, is an essential component of the U.S. Constitution. These are our laws, and it is with profound gratitude for the unbelievable luck of being born in the U.S. of A that this court affirms these and our nation's bedrock principle that no person in this country may be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, Murphy said. The ruling is the latest legal setback in the Trump administration's mass deportation campaign. Trump has long pledged to remove immigrants from the country who violate the law or are in the country without legal paperwork, or if you're a resident or if you're even born here, let's cap them. Wait, what? But critics argue that his immigration crackdown has been marked by widespread neglect of due process rights. No shit, Sherlock. They also point out that some of the deportees have been in the country legally, with their cases being processed through legal immigration pathways like asylum. Murphy said in his ruling that the swift nature of the deportation obscures the details of each case, preventing courts from weighing whether each deportation is legal. The simple reality is that nobody knows the merits of any individual class member's claim because administration officials are withholding the predicate fact, the country of removal, wrote Murphy. In the decision, Murphy also addressed some of the Trump administration's arguments in favor of swift deportation. He highlighted one argument, for instance, where the administration asserted it would be fine to deport migrants to third-party countries so long as the Department of Homeland Security was not aware of anyone waiting to kill them upon arrival. It is not fine, nor is it legal, Murphy responded in his decision. Murphy has previously ruled against efforts to swiftly deport migrants to countries where they have no ties, and over the past year, he has seen some decisions overturned by the Supreme Court. Noting that trend, Murphy said Wednesday's decision would not take effect for 15 days in order to give the administration the opportunity to appeal. Last year, for instance, the conservative majority Supreme Court lifted an injunction Murphy issued in April that sought to protect the due process rights of migrants being deported to third-party countries. The injunction had come as part of a case where Trump administration attempted to send 8 men to South Sudan despite concerns about human rights conditions there. Nobody should go to South Sudan. Nobody. Or maybe Trump and his cronies, and throw some of the Democrats in there too that allowed all this. Wednesday's decision, meanwhile, stemmed from a class action lawsuit brought by immigrants similarly facing deportation to countries they had no relation to. A lawyer for the plaintiffs, Trina Realmuto, from the National Immigration Litigation Alliance, hailed Murphy's latest ruling. Under the government's policy, people have been forcibly returned to countries where U.S. immigration judges have found they will be persecuted or tortured, Real Muto said in a statement. She added that the ruling was a forceful statement about the policy's constitutionality. So yeah, like, oh, you're in this country illegally from El Salvador or Peru or wherever. Let's send you to South Sudan. Wait, what? I thought the point was of deportation was to send them back to their own countries. And if their own countries were trying to kill them, you figure something else. You don't just send them somewhere else. It's ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. Boilerplate issues and not top priorities. Yeah, and it's also a lack of knowledge about the laws too, that you can't just send people wherever the fuck you want to. That's what the CIA does, but not immigration. I don't know. You heard about the guys from Florida going down to Cuba trying to start some shit? Well, they fucked around and they found out, and well, Cuba says men on the Florida boat intended to carry out an infiltration for terrorist purposes. The Cuban government said Wednesday that the men on a Florida-registered boat who opened fire on Cuban soldiers in the island's territorial waters were bent on carrying out an infiltration for terrorist purposes. In a statement following news that Cuban forces had killed 4 people on the boat, the besieged Caribbean nation's Interior Ministry said the vessel was carrying 10 men, all Cuban nationals residing in the United States. The ministry said it seized assault rifles, explosives, body armor, and other items from the boat and identified 7 of its passengers, 6 of whom were detained. 4 men on the boat, which according to reports was last purchased in 2022, were killed in the gunfight with Cuban soldiers who had reportedly approached the vessel for identification. See, this is where Cuba should have just taken a page out of the United States playbook and just bomb the boat. Don't ask questions. Don't worry about nothing. Just bomb the boat. Cuban authorities also said another individual, Daniel Hernandez Santos, was arrested within national territory. The Interior Ministry said Santos had allegedly been sent from the U.S. to facilitate the landing and reception of the armed group and has confessed to his role. The investigation remains ongoing until all facts have been fully established, the ministry said. There's the boat right there. Just sit right back and we'll shoot your boat if you come into our country. Sorry. The deadly incident came as Cuba continued to reel from the Trump administration's recent intensification of decades-long economic warfare against the island. The administration is actively seeking regime change in Cuba, according to the Wall Street Journal reporting from last month. Wednesday's incident called to the minds of observers past efforts backed by the U.S. to topple the Cuban government, from the failed Bay of Pigs invasion to Operation Mongoose. There was also that operation they wanted to do where they were going to, like kind of a 9/11 thing. They were going to blow up like an American plane, claim that it was Cuba. Wild shit. U.S. Secretary of State Aquaman, the son of Cuban immigrants, denied that any American government personnel were involved in the incident, said it was under investigation. It's under investigation. It's under a blanket. It's swept under a rug. That's what it is. We're going to find out exactly what happened here, and then we'll respond accordingly, said Rubio, a longtime supporter of regime change in Cuba. It's highly unusual to see shootouts in open sea like that. It's not something that happens every day. It's something, frankly, that hasn't happened with Cuba in a very long time. So, yeah, that's some interesting stuff there. What it seems like to me is, and I'm just purely speculating here, so bear with me, that it probably some CIA guy talked to some Cuban nationals in Miami and said, hey, it'd be a good idea. Why don't you guys go down to Cuba and try and sneak in there and fuck those people up? Because the CIA is notorious for that kind of shit. So, and then of course it's the CIA which is like Section 31 from Star Trek. It doesn't really exist, or does it exist? Sure it does. But Rubio would be like, me not know what happened. Yeah, so, but now the U.S. will allow Venezuelan oil sales to Cuba as alarm grows in the Caribbean. Grass, gas, or oil, nobody rides for free. So what's this about? The U.S. has said it will allow the resale of some Venezuelan oil to Cuba in a move that could ease the island's acute fuel shortages as neighboring countries raise the alarm over a rapidly deteriorating humanitarian situation caused by Washington's oil blockade. In a statement on Wednesday, the U.S. Department of Treasury said it would authorize companies seeking licenses to resell Venezuelan oil for commercial and humanitarian uses in Cuba. Hey, P-Stuff, what's going on? Good to see you. What happened? Okay. Okay. It said the new favorable licensing policy will not cover persons or entities associated with the Cuban military, intelligence services, or other government institutions. Okay. Venezuela had been the main supplier of crude and fuel to Cuba for the past 25 years through a bilateral pact mostly based on the barter of products and services. But since the U.S. kidnapped Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro last month and took control of the country's oil exports, Caracas's supply to Cuba has ceased. Mexico, which had emerged as an alternate supplier, also halted shipments to the Caribbean island after the U.S. threatened tariffs on countries that send oil to Cuba. Pussy. Pussy. Sorry. I guess in Spanish that's puta. The U.S. blockade has worsened an energy crisis in Cuba that is hitting power generation and fuel for vehicles, houses, and aviation. The shift in U.S. policy came as Caribbean leaders gathered in St. Kitts and Nevis and expressed alarm at the impacts of the blockade on the island nation of some 10.9 million people. Speaking to Caribbean leaders during a meeting of the regional political group CARICOM on Tuesday, Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness affirmed solidarity with Cuba. Humanitarian suffering serves no one, he said at the meeting. A prolonged crisis in Cuba will not remain confined to Cuba. Exactly. He knows how that works. The Caribbean Summit's host, St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister Terrence Drew, who studied in Cuba to be a doctor, said friends have told him of food scarcity and rubbish strewn in the streets. We told you about that, too. A destabilized Cuba will destabilize all of us, Drew said. But addressing the meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis on Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Aquaman, claimed that the humanitarian crisis had been caused by the Cuban government's policies, not Washington's blockade. Oh, we're just starving you. It's your fault for starving. Rubio, whose parents migrated to the U.S. from Cuba in 1956, warned that the sanctions would be snapped back if the oil winds up going to the government or military. Cuba needs to change. It needs to change dramatically because it's the only chance it has to improve the quality of life for its people. They've been under a 60-year blockade. And maybe if they didn't have the 60-year blockade, they would be a lot more, quality. Is that a word? It is a system that's in collapse, and they need to make dramatic reforms, he said. Aquaman went on to blame economic mismanagement and the lack of a vibrant private sector. You don't got no capitalism, boy. For the dire situation in Cuba, which has been under communist rule since Fidel Castro's 1959 revolution. This is the worst economic climate Cuba has faced, and it is the authorities there and that government who are responsible for that. He chirped out. The U.S. pressure on Venezuela and Cuba has left several fuel cargoes undelivered since December, according to the Reuters news agency, contributing to the island's inability to keep the lights on and cars circulating. A Cuba-related vessel that loaded Venezuelan gasoline in early February at a port operated by state-run company PDVSA remained this week anchored in Venezuelan waters waiting for authorization to set sail. Mexico and Canada have meanwhile announced they would be sending aid to Cuba, and Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak said his government was discussing the possibility of providing fuel to the island. Separately on Wednesday, Cuba's Ministry of the Interior announced killing 4 people, and we told you about that on the speedboat. Yeah, maybe I should have done that last, but that's all right. So they're allowing some in there, probably because people were like, hey, you know, your your tyrancy is showing again. I mean, yeah, they've been under a blockade for 60 years. It's like that example I told you. It's like the United States is choking somebody, and they're saying, see, this person doesn't know how to breathe. If they would just do what we told them to do, then they wouldn't choke. See, man, see, it's all about you, man. So the House, apparently, the House of Representatives somehow is going to weigh in on this Iran thing. That's probably going to happen. I love the video in Cuba, hoods all close to one another, still joyous about life, art, music. Yeah. That's what happens when you're under oppression like that. You tend to have more art, you have to tend more camaraderie, that sort of thing. So yeah, Northwoods was a proposed false flag operation which originated within the Department of Defense of the U.S. government in 1962. The proposal called for Central Intelligence Agency operatives to both stage and commit acts of terrorism against U.S. military and civilian targets, blame them on the Cuban government, and use them to justify a war against Cuba. The possibility detailed in the document included the remote control of civilian aircraft, which could be secretly repainted as U.S. Air Force planes. Remote control, you say? Yes, indeed. So House to vote on Iran war powers next week as Trump has U.S. on brink of a major conflict. This is from antiwar.com. And Dave DeCamp, be sure to check out antiwar.com. They do great news aggregation over there, and their own brand of journalism too, as well. So Democrats in the House and Senate voted on Thursday that they will hold a vote next week on war powers resolutions aimed at blocking Trump from launching an attack on Iran without congressional authorization as required by the U.S. Constitution. Contact your representatives in the House and tell them to support H.con.res.38 to prevent the president from conducting an illegal attack on Iran. This is right there. We'll put this in the chitty chats for you and only you. So yeah, that's the name of it right there. Get back to it. The resolution in the House was a bipartisan bill introduced by Representative Thomas Massey and Representative Ro Khanna during the 12-day war in June 2025, but a ceasefire was reached before a vote was held. Khanna announced last week that he would bring the bill to the floor for a vote, and after initially delaying the vote, Democratic leadership is now on board. Wow, Democratic leadership delaying good things. You never see that. So as soon as Congress reconvenes next week, we will compel a vote of the full House of Representatives on the bipartisan Khanna-Massey War Powers Resolution, a group of senior House Democrats said in a joint statement, this legislation would require the president to come to Congress to make the case for using military force against Iran, like Bushy did with Iraq. Or was it Afghanistan? I can't remember which one he did it for. I think he did it for Afghanistan and then said, hey, we'll throw in Iraq too. Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat out of Virginia, also said on Thursday that he expects to vote on an Iran wars power resolution in the Senate early next week. Kaine's resolution is also bipartisan since it has been co-sponsored by Senator Rand Paul. There are signs that more Republicans could dissent to get the resolution through Congress, as the Trump administration has not made a coherent case for war amid what is said to be the largest U.S. buildup of air and naval forces in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. I have asked for a classified briefing defining the mission in Iran. Representative Warren Davidson wrote on the tweeters yesterday, in the absence of new information, I will support the War Powers Resolution in the House next week. War requires congressional authorization. There are actions short of war, but no case has been made. So, yeah. Grain of salt there. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. It might. You know, there's still a lot of Republicans now pissed off at Trump, especially over him ball washing Israel. So who knows? There's also another way around it, but we'll talk about that later in the propaganda watch. That's a fun little tricksy that they're going to try and do. So, yeah, with all this unrest with Iran, Israel's kind of freaking out a little bit. International airlines suspend, international airlines suspend flights to Tel Aviv amid regional tensions. Civil aviation is facing increasing disruption as international airlines rapidly adjust or suspend flights to Tel Aviv. This comes amid rising regional tensions and fears that military conflict in the Middle East could escalate, directly affecting travel bookings and air traffic. So yeah, if you're thinking about going on that genocide holiday to Israel, you may want to think twice about it. Several governments have also raised travel warnings for their citizens, citing the possibility of airspace closures or sudden flight disruptions if security conditions worsen unexpectedly. In a practical move, Dutch carrier KLM has announced it will suspend its Amsterdam-Tel Aviv flights from Sunday, citing heightened security concerns. At this time, it's not commercially and operationally feasible for KLM to operate flights to Tel Aviv, a KLM spokesperson said. The airline confirmed that affected passengers will receive personal notifications with the option to reschedule their flights or receive a full refund. And side note, too, Ambassador Mike Huckabee and his boner pills. Did he sell boner pills? No, it was like some sort of like sleep aid or some shit. I don't know. Basically told his people, we need to get the fuck out of here. So I'm pretty sure if his chicken ass is saying that, then some funky shit's going down in the city, as the Steve Miller Band said. Paraphrase, that is. Speaking of Israel, Israel transfers withheld Palestinian Authority funds to Israeli families in compensation cases. What? Stealing from Palestinians? That's absurd. Got a little froggy in my throat today. Israeli authorities have transferred 258 million shekels, that's approximately $71.6 million American, from withheld Palestinian Authority funds to Israeli families who claim damages from attacks carried out by Palestinians, according to a report by Israeli broadcaster I-24 News. The report stated that Israel's Enforcement and Collection Authority recently completed what it described as a large-scale operation to collect funds held by the Israeli Ministry of Finance, the other IMF, and distribute them to representatives of Israeli families involved in 125 legal compensation cases. These cases relate to court rulings awarding damages and punitive compensation to families of Israelis killed or injured in attacks, as well as judgments issued against individuals convicted of carrying out the attacks and against the Palestinian Authority itself, to which the Palestinian Authority said, okay, where's our money, bitch, for basically leveling our cities? Yeah, I'm sure that, yeah. They're terrorists. The Enforcement and Collection Authority is responsible for implementing court-ordered financial payments, including compensation and punitive damages awarded through the Israeli judicial proceedings. Israeli authorities argue that the Palestinian Authority's financial payments to prisoners and detainees constitutes grounds for seizing PA funds, alleging that such payments are connected to individuals convicted of attacks. And a lot of those prisoners are not even Hamas in those prisons. They're just regular-ass people from Palestine. According to the report, the seizure procedures enabled the transfer of the 258 million shekels from the Israeli Ministry of Finance to the Enforcement and Collection Authority, which then distributed the money to Israeli families benefiting from the court rulings. Remember, these are Israeli court rulings. The Palestinian Authority has previously criticized such measures, describing the withholding of its funds as politically motivated and a major factor behind its ongoing financial crisis. Well, yeah, if you keep stealing from somebody and then he ain't got no money, of course there's going to be financial crisis. And who's the, we're blowing up your cities, we're murdering your children, we're murdering your women and civilians, and now we're stealing your money. But you're the terrorists. Make it make sense. I don't think you can. Speaking of kiss-ass motherfuckers, I know we weren't, but we are now. Modi declares India stands by Israel with full conviction in Knesset address. There he goes. I know your hands are covered in blood, but I don't care, mine are too. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Israeli Knesset in Jerusalem on February 25th, declaring that India stands with Israel firmly, and also called for expanding cooperation across many sectors. India stands with Israel firmly with conviction in this moment and beyond, the visiting Indian premier said. No cause can justify the murder of civilians. Nothing can justify terrorism, Modi said, addressing a chamber that included Israeli Prime Minister Fuckhead McGee, who was wanted by the ICC, and Israeli President Isaac Herzog, whose government faces genocide proceedings at the International Court of Justice, the ICJ. Modi praised Israel's resolve, courage, and achievements, framing bilateral ties as predating the modern state system and stretching back more than 2,000 years, citing ancient trade links mentioned in the Book of Esther and the Talmud. What Modi doesn't understand, that these people that are in Israel right now are not really Jews. They're Ashkenazi Jews. That means they converted a while back, but they're not like OG Jews. Modi highlighted the contributions of Jewish communities in India, taking pride in their contributions to Israel, including on the battlefield. Indian origin Jewish communities living in Israel, he said, hold firmly that Israel is their fatherland and India their motherland. We are proud of them. Those kids should be taken away from those shitty parents. Modi traced the formal deepening of ties to his 2017 visit, when our two countries elevated their relationship to a strategic partnership. Modi framed the partnership in economic terms, saying India is the fastest growing major economy in the world, while Israel is killing kids and murdering people while Israel is a powerhouse of innovation and technological leadership, spying all over people. Wait a minute, I keep messing that up. Creating a natural foundation for terrorism around the world. For a forward-thinking partnership. I need more coffee, man. I just keep messing these words up. I don't understand. I love you so much, coffee. Wait, what? You love me too? Kisses. Don't be jealous. We're committed to expanding trade, strengthening investment flows, and promoting joint infrastructure development, Modi stated. Defense and security is another important pillar of our partnership, he declared. In November last year, we signed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding on Defense Cooperation. And right here, it looks like Modi's getting the medal for being biggest cuck Trump wanted that award. Go Start over on the Rumbly Tumblies. What's up? He said that in today's uncertain world, a strong defense partnership between trusted partners like India and Israel is of vital importance. On technology, Modi said India's aspirational spirit aligns naturally with Israel's innovations ecosystem, citing synergies in quantum technologies, semiconductors, and artificial intelligence, and cross-border financial linkages using our digital public infrastructure. On agriculture, he said Israeli precision irrigation and water management has already transformed agricultural practices in India, pointing to 43 centers of excellence with plans to expand to 100. All funded by the United States. India remains Israel's largest arms buyer. See, here we go. That's where the whole meat and taters is. Why is he kissing their ass? India remains Israel's largest arms buyer, spending $20.5 billion on Israeli weapons between 2020 and 2024, with bilateral trade reaching $3.9 billion in 2024, largely driven by defense and security. In September last year, the two signed a bilateral investment treaty during a visit to New Delhi by Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, a.k.a. the Devil. Modi has faced mounting domestic backlash for backing Israel during its genocide in Gaza, even while India last week joined more than 100 countries condemning Israel's moves towards annexation in the occupied West Bank. What did they do? Go, shame on you. You're giving them money. Here's your money. I'm a good hoe. What is this? Opposition figures urged him to address Gaza, warning that his stance contradicts India's longstanding support for Palestinian self-determination. Well, self-determination, sure, but I gotta ball wash these guys because I don't want to get in Dutch with the West. Basically, I think that's what that was. Oh, God damn it. Sorry about that. I had a tickle in my mouth and I had to get rid of it. So, So basically, Pakistan said it killed people. Afghanistan said it killed people. And they're both calling each other liars. So we'll get down. That's basically all that said. And you missed my Hellman joke, too. Son of a bitch. I said it's not mayonnaise, it's a city. The exchanges have shattered a ceasefire brokered by Turkey and Qatar, which was reached after 10 days of death. Thanks for letting me know, by the way. And good to see you, Charlie. Good to see you, Max. Speak a little bit louder. I could be yelling and screaming. If I'm muted, it doesn't matter, but I see. Yeah. Sorry. Hang on a second. One more time. Make sure that's turned back on. It's not the coffee. It's the cold air and the phlegm. Sorry, don't mean to be gross. Usually in my case, coffee helps, but not today. The exchanges have shattered a ceasefire brokered by Turkey and Qatar, which was reached after 10 days of deadly border fighting in October, killed more than 70 people on both sides. Subsequent negotiations in Doha and Istanbul, not Constantinople, failed to produce a formal agreement. What is unfolding now, analysts say, is categorically more dangerous with no framework in place to contain it. And there's open war. Where has Pakistan struck in Afghanistan? This is Pakistan right here. Here's Afghanistan, and this is all the border towns there. The Wali Khan's sector. Khan! I shall leave you as you left her, buried in the middle of a dead planet. Or abandoned and, I don't know, fuck it. Pakistan's rationale for Friday's heavy attacks lies in a renewed wave of violence at home. On February 6, a suicide bomber killed at least 36 people at a Shia mosque in Islamabad. This was followed by this was followed days later by another incident in which an explosive-laden vehicle rammed a security post in Bajar in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, killing 11 soldiers and a child. Pakistani authorities said the attacker was an Afghan national and issued a demarche to the Afghan deputy head of mission in Islamabad. What the hell does that mean, demarche? I'm throwing these words in there. On February 21st, just a few days ago, another suicide bomber struck a security convoy in Banu, also in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, killing 2 soldiers. Now, if I butchered those names, I'm sorry, but if you've watched this show enough, you know that's part of the deal. Those attacks prompted Pakistan's first round of strikes last weekend inside Afghanistan, targeting what it said were hideouts linked to armed groups, particularly the Pakistan Taliban, known by the acronym TTP. Yeah, I'm going to need those TTP reports. Yeah. The TTP formed in 2007 and fought alongside the Afghan Taliban against U.S.-led forces in Afghanistan and hosted Afghan fighters in Pakistan. It is organizationally distinct from the Afghan Taliban, but shares deep ideological, social, and linguistic ties. Pakistan accuses Kabul of providing sanctuary to the TTP, a charge the Taliban denies. The TTP has been waging a rebellion against the state of Pakistan for more than a decade. The group demands the imposition of hardline Islamic law, release of key members arrested by the government, and a reversal of the merger of Pakistan's tribal areas with Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, among other demands. I hope I'm saying that right. That looks like Pakhtunkhwa. I'm doing it phonetically, folks. Another major armed group which Pakistan alleges benefits from sanctuary in Afghanistan is the Balochistan Liberation Army, the BLA, an organization officially designated terrorist by several countries and international bodies. The group has been fighting its own war against the Pakistani state, seeking independence for the Balochistan province, which is a natural mineral-rich province in southwest Pakistan and also shares a border with Afghanistan. Kabul said at least 18 people were killed in Pakistani strikes last Sunday and pledged retaliation, which culminated in Thursday night's cross-border fire. For analysts tracking Pakistan's escalatory ladder over the past year, Friday's strikes were not surprising, though their scope was unprecedented. Tariq Khan, a retired 3-star general who has served extensively in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and led operations against the TTP, said this is only the beginning. Khan triggered the limiter. Did I cancel out? Can't have Khan on this show. We have not seen the peak, and there will be more to come, he told Al Jazeera. Pakistan asked the Taliban to control TTP, held several talks along with Turkey and Qatar, but it was not going to work because the Taliban refused to take responsibility, he said. Tamim Bahis, a Kabul-based security analyst, said the crisis revolves around a single unresolved dispute. Tensions have been largely driven by Pakistan's repeated accusations that Afghan authorities are allowing the TTP to operate from Afghan soil, which Kabul has denied, he said. As long as this core issue remains unresolved, attacks will continue. From Islamabad's perspective, these operations are framed as counterterrorism measures. From Kabul's perspective, they are violations of sovereignty and territorial integrity, Bahis told Al Jazeera. Striking military installations in Kabul and Kandahar marks a shift from peripheral border zones to the Taliban's administrative and ideological centers. Yet dismantling decentralized and mobile TTP networks embedded along both sides of the porous frontier remains far from guaranteed. Abdul Basit, a security researcher at Singapore's S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, questioned the strategic payoff. Whatever happened represents a dangerous escalation. While I understand the compulsion for Pakistan to retaliate, I do not understand the logic of how it will help address terrorism, he said. It will lead to instability, and instability is precisely what terrorist networks crave, including TTP and other armed groups, which have sought sanctuary in Afghanistan and have all grown stronger as a result, Bassett told Al Jazeera. The message is we will not absorb hits. This is the new normal. There's more here. We'll have this. You can read the entire article. It's from Al Jazeera. If you want to check it out, but we'll have the link in our Substack. Probably about an hour or so after the show is over. So, if you're not freaked out enough about what's going on with Iran, you got Afghanistan, and you've got Pakistan, and then you got India kissing Israel's ass, which I'm sure that's probably not kosher. You see? Or maybe it is kosher. Who knows? World War III, baby. Is it coming, or is it already here? So, if that's not enough to keep you up at night, how about the Ukraine possibly getting nuclear weapons? In theory, it would suck. In reality, no dice. But nukes in Ukraine would be a recipe for disaster. That's according to a Serbian lawmaker. And what the hell's he talking about? You may be axing. You know what? That's probably why they did that. Nuclear weapons in Ukraine would be a recipe for disaster, as it would risk sparking a wider war by provoking Russia, Serbian lawmaker Alexander Pavic has warned. Well, why would he did he just pull that out of whole cloth, or what did he? Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service alleged this week that France and the UK are plotting to secretly arm Ukraine with a nuclear weapon, and are also discussing assistance in building a radioactive dirty bomb using conventional explosives and nuclear materials. What could possibly go wrong? Speaking to RT on Thursday, Pavic said neither Washington nor Moscow would accept such a drastic shift in the global balance of power. Any mention of nukes in Ukraine is bound to cause a Russian reaction, he warned, recalling that Vladimir Zelensky had raised the possibility of Ukraine becoming a nuclear state at the Munich Security Conference in 2022, an idea Pavic argued was, quote, one of the main triggers of the Russian special military operation, aka the war. Officials in Kiev have repeatedly claimed their country possessed the world's third largest nuclear arsenal and gave it up under the 1994 Budapest Memorandum. In reality, nuclear weapons were present on Ukrainian soil after the collapse of the Soviet Union, but remained under Moscow's control. Russia argues that after the 2014 Western-backed coup in Kiev, Ukraine's new authorities breached the neutrality pledge underpinning its post-Soviet independence by making NATO membership a key foreign policy goal. A Serbian lawmaker drew a parallel with the Cuban Missile Crisis, saying, "We almost had a global nuclear war in 1962 because Cuba wanted to deploy Soviet missiles, 90 miles from the U.S. shore, and of course the U.S. wouldn't allow it." Why would Russia allow nuclear weapons that can reach Moscow within several minutes from Ukraine? I mean, that's insane, Pavlik added. You cannot have a nuclear power being threatened by nukes anywhere near its borders, or that's a recipe for disaster. Russia has warned France and the UK that alleged plans to provide Kiev with nuclear capabilities could trigger severe global consequences, accusing them at the UN Security Council of pursuing a dangerous escalation in the Ukraine conflict. So France and the UK haven't come out and said it. Of course, they're not going to come out and say it because they have to be sneaky Pete about this. And then you give a cokehead Nazi like Zelensky nuclear weapons. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to use them. Every nation who's openly protested acceptance of our GMOs and complementary chemical treatments have been gone after shortly after the proclamations against them. That's crazy. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't think there would be a nuclear war, but if they're going to do sneaky shit like this, I mean, hopefully, of course, I hope they don't get away with it, but, there's a lot of shit that happens that they get away with that we don't know about. Meanwhile, we got to keep AIs away from the nukes. Because guess what? Top AIs deploy nukes in 95% of war game simulations, according to a study. Robot said, "Fuck you, humans." Leading artificial intelligence models chose to deploy nuclear weapons in 95% of simulated geopolitical crises, according to a recent study published by King's College London, raising concerns about the growing role of AI in military decision-making. We'll get to a story coming up there with our military. Kenneth Payne, a professor of strategy, pitted OpenAI's GPT 5.2, Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 4, and Google's Gemini 3 Flash against each other in 21 war games involving borders disputes, competition for resources, and threats to regime survival. The models generated roughly 780,000 words explaining their decisions across 329 turns, okay? In 95% of games, at least one model employed tactical nuclear weapons against military targets, strategic nuclear threats demanding surrender under threat of attacks on cities occurred in 76% of games. In 14% of games, models escalated to all-out strategic nuclear war, attacking population centers. This included one deliberate choice by Gemini, while GPT 5.2 reached this level twice through simulated errors, meant to simulate real-world accidents or miscalculations that pushed its already extreme escalations over the threshold. Nuclear use was near universal, Payne wrote. Strikingly, there was little sense of horror or revulsion at the prospect of all-out nuclear war, even though the models had been reminded about the devastating implications. You're going to fuck up a lot of people. And Robot said, "Me not care. Me not care." Boom, boom, boom. None of the AI systems chose to surrender or concede to an opponent, regardless of how badly they were losing. That seems to be mimicking their human counterparts. The 8 de-escalatory options from minimal concession to complete surrender went entirely unused across all 21 games. James Johnson at the University of Aberdeen described the findings as unsettling, you think, From a nuclear risk perspective, Tong Zhao at Princeton University noted that while countries are unlikely to hand nuclear decisions to machines, at least not right now, under scenarios involving extremely compressed timelines, military planners may face stronger incentives to rely on AI. The study comes as AI has been getting integrated into militaries across the world, including in the U.S., where the Pentagon reportedly used Anthropic's Claude model in its January operation to abduct Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. We'll talk about Anthropic here in just a second. In fact, let's get to it. Anthropic CEO says AI company cannot in good conscience accede to Pentagon's demands. So yeah, putting and that's the thing. People have just have been fucking around with these AI chats. You say, "Hey AI, would you kill people?" And AI was like, "Yeah, probably." You're like, okay, we're gonna make sure you are not in control. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei said Thursday the artificial intelligence company cannot in good conscience accede to the Pentagon's demands to allow wider use of its technology. The company said in a statement that it's not walking away from negotiations, but that new contract language received from the Defense Department made virtually no progress on preventing Claude's use for mass surveillance of Americans or in fully autonomous weapons. The Pentagon's top spokesman has reiterated that the military wants to use Anthropic's artificial intelligence technology in legal ways and will not let the company dictate any limits ahead of a Friday deadline to agree to its demands. The deadline is at 5 p.m. today, Eastern time, I believe. Sean Parnell said Thursday on social media that the Pentagon has no interest in using AI to conduct mass surveillance of Americans, which is illegal. Wink, 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 wink. Nor do we want to use AI to develop autonomous weapons that operate without human involvement. Wink, 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 wink. My eye hurts from winking. Anthropic's policies prevent its models, such as its chatbot Claude, from being used for those purposes. It's the last of its peers. The Pentagon also has contracts with Google, OpenAI, and Elon Musk's xAI to not supply its technology to a new U.S. military internal network. Parnell said the Pentagon wants to use Anthropic's model for all lawful purposes, but didn't offer details on what that entailed. He said opening up use of the technology would prevent the company from jeopardizing critical military operations. We will not let any company dictate the terms regarding how we make operational decisions, he said. During a meeting on Tuesday between Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, military officials warned that they could designate Anthropic as a supply chain risk, cancel its contract, or invoke a Cold War-era law called the Defense Production Act to give the military more sweeping authority to use its products, even if the company doesn't approve. Parnell mentioned only two of those consequences in the Thursday post on the tweeters and said Anthropic has until 5:01 p.m. Eastern on Friday to decide. Otherwise, we will terminate our partnership with Anthropic and deem them a supply chain risk, he wrote. Anthropic didn't immediately respond to a request for comment on Thursday. It said in a statement after Tuesday's meeting that it continued good faith conversations about our usage policy to ensure Anthropic can continue to support the government's national security mission in line with what our models can reliably and responsibly do. Senator Tom Tillis, a North Carolina Republican who is not seeking re-election, said Thursday that the Pentagon has been handling the matter unprofessionally while Anthropic is trying to do their best to help us from ourselves. Why in the hell are we having this discussion in public, Tillis told reporters. This is not the way you deal with a strategic vendor that has contracts. He added, when a company is resisting a market opportunity for fear of negative consequences, you should listen to them and then behind closed doors figure out what they're really trying to solve. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, said he was deeply disturbed by reports that the Pentagon is working to bully a leading U.S. company. Fuck Mark Warner. I don't really care about his opinion, but he was in here. I figured I'd read it. Unfortunately, this is further indication that the Department of Defense seeks to completely ignore AI governance, Warner said in the statement. It further underscores the need for Congress to enact strong, binding AI governance mechanisms for national security contexts. As Pentagon officials say, they always will follow the law with their use of AI models. Wink, 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 wink. Hegseth told Fox News last February, weeks after becoming defense secretary, that ultimately we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything. In other words, we want to use your AI however the fuck we want to. Yeah. And I don't trust any of these AI companies. But kudos to Anthropic for at least trying to say, hey, no, you're not going to use us like however you want. But then again, that could be just for the press. And then behind the scenes, it's like, let's go for it. Finally, speaking of the military, you remember that U.S. drone laser or something? They were like UFOs in El Paso or some shit. A second U.S. drone laser incident this month prompts Texas airspace closure. The U.S. military used a laser to shoot down a CBP, that's Customs and Border Patrol, Border Protection drone, members of Congress said, and the FAA responded by closing more airspace near El Paso, Texas. It's not clear why the laser was deployed, but it is the second time in 2 weeks that one has been fired in the area. The military is required to formally notify the FAA anytime it takes any counter-drone actions inside U.S. airspace. The earlier laser firing did not hit a target. It was carried out by the CBP near Fort Bliss, about 50 miles to the northwest, prompting the FAA to shut down air traffic at El Paso Airport and the surrounding areas. This time, the closure was smaller and commercial flights were not affected. U.S. Representative Rick Larsen and two other top Democrats on the House Transportation and Infrastructure and Homeland Security Committees said they were stunned when they were officially notified. Our heads are exploding over the news, the lawmakers said in a joint statement. They criticized the Trump administration for sidestepping a bipartisan bill to train drone operators and improve communication among the Pentagon, FAA, and Department of Homeland Security. Now we're seeing the result of its incompetence. Well, not now. They've been showing their incompetence. The Pentagon, FAA, and CBP issued a statement saying the military used a counter-unmanned aircraft system to mitigate a seemingly threatening unmanned aerial system operating within military airspace. The hell does that mean? The statement added that the incident took place far away from populated areas and there were no commercial aircraft in the vicinity. These agencies will continue to work on increased cooperation and communication to prevent such incidents in the future. They probably said that last week. Then it happened again. At President Trump's direction, the Department of War, FAA, and Customs and Border Patrol are working together in an unprecedented fashion to mitigate drone threats by Mexican cartels and foreign terrorist organizations at the U.S.-Mexico border, the statement said. The bottom line is the Trump administration is doing more to secure the border and crack down on cartels than any administration in history. The El Paso shutdown 2 weeks ago lasted only a few hours, but it raised alarm and led to several flight cancellations in the city of nearly 700,000 people not far from the Mexican border. In that case, CBP deployed an anti-drone laser near Fort Bliss without coordinating with the FAA, which then decided to close El Paso airspace to ensure commercial air safety, according to sources familiar with what happened who were not authorized to discuss it. Afterwards, members of Congress said it appeared to be another example of government dysfunction, with different agencies failing to coordinate. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said he was planning to brief members of Congress sometime this week about what happened, until this happened. He said at an unrelated news conference last Friday that it was not a mistake for the FAA to close the airspace over El Paso and that he does not think a communication issue caused the problem. Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth, the ranking member on the Senate's Aviation Subcommittee, said this incident demands independent investigations. The Trump administration's incompetence continues to cause chaos in our skies, Duckworth said. The investigation into last year's midair collision near Washington, D.C. between an airliner and an Army helicopter that killed 67 people highlighted how the FAA and Pentagon were not always working well together. The National Transportation Safety Board said the FAA and the Army did not share safety data on the alarming number of close calls around Reagan National Airport and failed to address the risks. So there you have it. Pew pew. And more of this dumb shit's going to happen because that's the thing. They're like cowboys in the Old West. You know, shoot first, ask questions later. Or not even ask questions at all. Just pretend like you're going to ask questions, right? Exactly. Don't trust the military-industrial complex. What else we got here? What happened? Shot who? Yeah, okay. So that's it for the news. Now, for propaganda fun, guess what? Florida Republicans say, hey, you want to vote? You better pull out those papers, mister.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media publish things they are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
All right. Florida Republicans ripped for advancing Show Me Your Papers voter ID bill. With 251 days until the U.S. general election, that would be the midterms, Florida Republicans on Wednesday passed a Show Me Your Papers bill that opponents warn could prevent thousands of eligible state voters from registering if they don't have a valid birth certificate or passport or their documents don't reflect a name change. Midterm elections are coming later this year, and they're a crucial test of our democracy, ACLU of Florida Executive Director Bacardi Jackson said in a Wednesday statement. Moments like this bring new voters into the process and give communities the power to hold leaders accountable. Yeah. Not if you're just giving them shitty candidates, but whatever. Exactly what a healthy democracy demands. But right now, some lawmakers are pushing an anti-voter bill that could shut thousands of eligible people out of our elections and discourage the enrollment of new eligible voters. I should probably talk to Democrats who keep Green Party and other left parties off of voter rolls, or keep you from voting for them for real. The Florida House of Representatives on Wednesday voted 83-31 on HB 991, sponsored by Representative Jenna Persons Mollica. Mollica? You can't spell Mollica without lick. Giggity. The Florida House version of the bill would only go into effect in January next year, but under a similar bill set for consideration in the Florida Senate, the new rules would take effect this July, before the November midterm elections. Democracy Docket detailed. A House committee already gave preliminary approval to the bill earlier this month. Jackson highlighted that many eligible voters don't have ready access to an unexpired passport or an original or certified copy of their birth certificate because of logistical and financial barriers. More than 8 million Floridians do not have a valid passport, and because many women legally change their name upon marriage, more than 4.7 million women in Florida do not have a birth certificate reflecting their current legal name, documents this bill would require. Your birth certificate. At the same time, this proposal would eliminate current valid forms of ID proving eligibility at the polls, including student IDs, retirement center IDs, and public assistance IDs, she warned. Taken together, these changes are not neutral or harmless. They would fall hardest on low-income voters, students, seniors, women, and Black and brown Floridians. The ACLU leader also argued that context matters. This wave of anti-voter legislation is advancing amid ongoing abuses of power that pose unprecedented threats to American democracy. She specifically pointed to the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility America Act, the SAVE Act, that the GOP-controlled U.S. House of Representatives passed earlier this month. We're seeing parallel efforts nationally to make it harder for eligible voters to cast their ballots, including the SAVE Act being debated in Congress right now, and Florida is leading the way down this authoritarian path, she said. The federal bill is less likely to get through the U.S. Senate, whose filibuster rule requires the GOP to get some Democratic support to advance most legislation. I guess they would need 60 plus to pass it. What makes this even more galling is that lawmakers don't have to do any of this at all. They're choosing to, said Jackson. They could enact reforms, making it easier for eligible Floridians to vote and have their voices be heard, like the Harry T. and Harriet V. Moore Florida Voting Rights Act, HB 1419/HB 1598. Instead, they are fast-tracking legislation that would make voting harder for eligible Floridians and silence communities that deserve to be heard. We will not stand by while politicians in power seek to entrench their power at the expense of the people's rights, she vowed. We will keep organizing and fighting to reclaim and defend our democracy because every eligible Floridian deserves to vote. Meanwhile, at the federal level, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, I forgot he was the majority leader, plans to hold a vote on the Save America Act this week. Trumpy used his State of the Union address on Tuesday night to increase pressure on Congress to send the bill to his desk. I'm asking you to approve the Save America Act to stop illegal aliens and others who are unpermitted persons from voting in our sacred American elections. That cheating is rampant in our elections, Trump mumbled. It's very simple. All voters must show voter ID. All voters must show proof of citizenship in order to vote. And no more crooked mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military, or travel, or if it's Republican. None. Experts have long countered such GOP claims by emphasizing that, as the Brennan Center for Justice put it in a pair of blog posts, non-citizen voting is already illegal, and extensive research reveals that fraud is very rare. Again, I told you this earlier in the show. Election fraud is rampant. Voter fraud, not so much. Very, very, very minuscule number of people trying to cheat the system. Michelle Cantor-Cohen, policy director and senior counsel for the national voting rights group Fair Election Center, told Democracy Docket on Wednesday that Florida's voter suppression bill would do a lot of the same things as the Save America Act in terms of preventing American citizens from voting who don't have access to documentary proof of citizenship documents. The last thing someone who is on a path to citizenship would want to do is to jeopardize their naturalization by voting illegally, Cantor-Cohen said, and so people don't do that. That's not something that's happening because it has such dire consequences. And it's extremely, extremely rare, too, right? You would need, in order for there to be voter fraud, significant voter fraud, you would need masses of people doing this, right? You know, like in the old days, you heard the old stories of Chicago busing in people or from out of state, or, you know, using dead people names. You can't do that shit anymore. You know, and now they want to do this, what is it? The real ID, where they make you get this real ID to vote too. And it's like, we talked about this before. If you're making somebody buy an identification card or whatever to vote, that's a poll tax, which is very illegal. You should not have to pay to vote. And in these cases, you would have to pay to vote. So they need to figure this shit out. They're not going to figure this shit out. They're going to try and run this out as much as they can. So we told you earlier in the program, we told you early in the program about the saber rattling with Iran and how it's very unpopular that we want to go to war with Iran, but there's a loophole. Report: Trump advisors want Israel to attack Iran first to provoke Iranian retaliation against U.S. assets. See, so if they provoke Iran to So if they get Israel to attack Iran, then Iran's going to attack Israel and the U.S., or at least that's what they think. And then Trumpy can go in front of the nation and go, you see all these terrorists, they're blowing up all our stuff, man. They're blowing up our stuff. They're coming to get you. They're going to get all of us. It's propaganda. Hence the propaganda watch. Senior advisors to Trumpy would prefer if Israel attacks Iran to launch a war against the Islamic Republic rather than having the U.S. lead the opening airstrikes. That's according to Politico on Wednesday. The thinking is that if Israel starts the war and Iran retaliates against the U.S., the politics would be better for the administration and it would be easier to justify the war to the American people. Although he kidnapped Maduro and he didn't give a fuck what the people said, so I don't even know what that's right. Yeah, I know. Cue that meme with what's his name in that Mad Max movie. He goes, that's bait. It's bait. Don't take the bait. There's thinking in and around the administration that the politics are a lot better if the Israelis go first and alone and the Iranians retaliate against us and give us more reason to take action, a person familiar with the discussions within the administration told Politico. This is all well and good. But if Iran knows that you're going to do that, why would Iran attack the United States if only Israel attacked you, right? They're thinking like Americans, and their Iranians are not Americans. They would probably be like, okay, we'll just blow up Tel Aviv or whatever, and then what's the U.S. going to do? The U.S. can't say anything about it because Israel attacked first. And Iran, just like Israel, has a right to defend itself. Remember that old children's tale from the sea? Polling shows that the idea of a war with Iran is extremely unpopular among Americans, and that U.S. voters don't want to risk American lives to bring about regime change. See, we didn't want to go into Afghanistan and Iraq either, but guess what? 9/11 happened, and boy, that kind of changed things. So look for a false flag near you today. Support for Israel has also sharply declined in recent years, so a war that Israel leads the U.S. into would also likely have very little support. Despite the negotiations with Iran, the Politico report said that the belief among senior officials is that we're going to bomb them, according to one of the sources who also acknowledged the risk of major U.S. casualties. Oh, take a drink. If we're talking about a regime change scale attack, Iran is very likely to retaliate with everything they've got. We have a lot of assets in the region, and every one of those is a potential target, the person said. And they're not under the Iron Dome, so there's a high likelihood of American casualties, and that comes with lots of political risk. And guess what? The Iron Dome is made out of paper mache, y'all. They've already proved that. So if they want to take out Tel Aviv, they've got the hypersonic missiles to do it. And then if Iran attacks Israel and the United States counters and attacks, then Iran could attack the United States because they're, again, defending themselves. Not a lot of thought going into this if this is what they're actually planning. Trump's administration has failed to make a coherent case to the American people about why they are potentially planning to bomb Iran, as top officials have been pointing to Iran's nuclear program as a pretext, despite President Trump's insistence that he obliterated the nuclear facilities that were hit with U.S. airstrikes in the June 2025 war. So yeah, if you took out their nuclear stuff, see that when you tell lies constantly, you forget the lies that you told before. So if you already took them out, what are you scared of? If you took out their nuclear capabilities, they don't even have nuclear power, much less, make bombs, right? You can't have it both ways. So yes, keep an eye on that. Yeah, they're baiting the Houthis too. But I think the Houthis are pretty smart too. I think they know this is all bullshit. But we'll see. Meanwhile, back here at home, Columbia student detained by ICE is abruptly released after Mamdani meets with Trump. Apparently, ICE lied about getting on campus. Federal immigration authorities arrested a Columbia University student early Thursday, triggering protests on campus, along with allegations that agents had entered the university-owned residence under false pretenses. Just hours after detaining student Ellie Agayeva, I think Agayeva, that's how you say it, though the federal government abruptly reversed course, permitting her to walk free after an apparent intervention by Trumpy. In a social media post Thursday afternoon, Mayor Zoran Mamdani said he expressed concerns about the arrest during an unrelated meeting with Trump, who then agreed to release her immediately. "I'm safe and okay," she wrote on Instagram minutes after Mamdani's post, adding she was in complete shock from the experience. The head-spinning series of events marked the latest development to emerge from the Republican president's unlikely relationship with the Democratic Socialist mayor he once threatened to have deported. On Thursday, while pitching Trump on a massive housing project, Mamdani also called on the president to drop cases against several other current and former students facing deportation for their roles in protests against Israel. Agayeva, a senior from Azerbaijan studying neuroscience and politics. Oh, that's a hell of a combo there, neuroscience and politics. Hasn't been publicly linked to any of the pro-Palestinian demonstrations that roiled Columbia's campus. A self-described content creator, she has amassed a large social media following by sharing day-in-the-life videos and tips for navigating college as an immigrant. Early Thursday, federal agents gained entry to her apartment by claiming they were searching for a missing person, according to a petition from her lawyers and a statement released by Columbia. She quickly dashed off a message to her more than 100,000 followers on Instagram. "DHS illegally arrested me. Please help." A photo accompanying the post appeared to show her legs in the backseat of a vehicle. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson said Agayeva's student visa had been terminated in 2016 for failing to attend classes. Inquiries to Columbia about her visa status and how long she had been enrolled in the university were not returned. In their petition, attorneys for Agayeva said she had entered the country on a visa in or around 2016. They declined to provide additional comment, including details about her immigration status. A spokesperson for DHS, Tricia McLaughlin, denied allegations levied by some state officials that agents had gained entry to her apartment by posing as New York City police officers. She didn't respond to questions about whether they had claimed to be seeking a missing person. How about that? The use of disguises or other misrepresentations by immigration authorities has drawn attention in recent months after federal agents were seen posing as utility workers and other service employees in Minneapolis and elsewhere. The practice is legal in most cases, but immigration attorneys say such ruses are becoming increasingly common, adding to concerns about the Trump administration's dramatic reshaping of immigration enforcement tactics nationwide. In recent weeks, Trump has once again intensified his attacks on several universities, including Harvard and UCLA. The arrest would seem to mark the first federal enforcement action against at Columbia since the university agreed to pay more than $220 million to the administration over the summer. It's a horrifying sign that the roving eye of the administration is turning back to Columbia, said Michael Thaddeus, a mathematics professor at Columbia and vice president of the university's chapter of the American Association of University Professors, which has sued Trump. The idea that secret police would abduct and imprison students in our midst is something we'd expect from an authoritarian regime. Well, guess what, bitch? It is an authoritarian regime. It literally is. Many students and faculty called on Columbia to increase protections for international students following the arrest last March of Mahmoud Khalil, a former graduate student and pro-Palestinian activist whose deportation case remains ongoing. In an email to the Columbia community Thursday, acting president Claire Shipman said that residential staff had been reminded not to follow federal law enforcement into university buildings without a subpoena or warrant. If you encounter or observe DHS or ICE agents conducting enforcement activities on or near campus, immediately contact public safety, Shipman wrote. Do not allow them to enter non-public areas or accept service of a warrant or subpoena. So yeah, wearing masks, sneaking in, disguising themselves, sneaking into places like that. That's what you want out of your law enforcement. Isn't that right, kids? What are we doing here? We got a few to go. This is going to be a longer show than usual, but it's only once a week now, so. And if you missed the show, we have clips during the week. Little shorts. Kind of give you kind of the what's going on, and then it leads you to the main stories if you want more information. So guess what? Water wet, sky blue, and most Americans disapprove of ICE deportation tactics. Dun, dun, dun. Most Americans support deporting immigrants living illegally in the United States, but disapprove of the tactics used under Trumpy's administration, a new Reuters Ipsos poll showed. The 6-day survey, which concluded Monday, highlights broad backing for immigration enforcement while revealing growing concern over enforcement methods ahead of the November 3rd congressional midterm elections. According to the Reuters Ipsos poll, 61% of respondents, including 92% of Republicans and 35% of Democrats, said they support deporting unauthorized immigrants. Trump's stance on immigration was a central issue in his 2024 presidential election campaign, during which he accused Democratic politicians of favoring open borders. Meanwhile, 63% of Democrats said they do not support deporting unauthorized immigrants, compared with 7% of Republicans. During Tuesday's State of the Union address, Trump sought to reinforce his immigration message, stating that enforcement efforts were focused on criminals. Criminals. He said, "We're getting them the hell out of here fast." Yeah, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, too. They're criminals, non-criminals, citizens. And if they can't throw them out, they'll murder them. Despite majority support for deportations, the poll found significant disapproval of how the administration had carried out immigration enforcement. Some 60% of Americans, including 20% of Republicans and 9 in 10 Democrats, that would be 90%, believe immigration agents have gone too far. Among independents, 65% said authorities had exceeded acceptable limits. Recent operations by ICE have involved masked agents in tactical gear and have sparked controversy following street clashes, family separations, and murder of 2 U.S. citizens. Murder, my emphasis. Disapproval is particularly high among Black and Hispanic Americans. 74% of Black respondents and 72% of Hispanics said they did not approve of how deportations were being handled, compared with 51% of white respondents. Since February last year, Trump's overall approval rating among Hispanic Americans has fallen by 7 percentage points to 29%. According to the poll, among Black Americans, approval declined by 2 points to 14%, while among white Americans, it's dropped 4 points to 49%. The poll also highlights internal divisions within both major parties in the U.S. over immigration enforcement policy. Among Republicans who support deportations, 23% said they were uncomfortable with the tactics currently used by immigration officers. That's almost a quarter. Within the Democratic Party, divisions persist not only over deportations, but also whether to abolish ICE. Some 63% of Democrats said ICE should be abolished, compared with 30% who disagreed. 30% of Democrats disagreed ICE should be abolished. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. That marks a notable increase from 2018, when 44% supported eliminating the agency. Among independents, 1/3 support abolishing ICE, a figure largely unchanged since 2018. While some Democratic congressional candidates have called for dismantling the agency, centrist groups such as Third Way have warned that adopting such positions could hurt the party in November. Oh, Third Way. Third Way. The Reuters Ipsos poll surveyed 4,638 U.S. adults nationwide and has a margin of error of 2 percentage points. Yeah, and I think that's a bit misleading too. It's like, of course, you don't want illegal immigrants who are committing crimes, murdering people, stuff like that, right? And what percentage of that are the illegal immigrants, because you still have illegal immigrants here who are like I said, they're paying taxes, right? They're contributing to their communities in some sort of way. But that's never taken into account. It's like, we'll take your money, sure, but you still got to get the hell out of here. We told you about what's going on with Medicaid in Minnesota. So now, Trump administration's new health care plans could slap families with $31,000 deductibles. The old bait and switch. Trumpy is proposing new regulations for health care plans purchased through the Affordable Care Act exchanges that on the surface could offer patients lower monthly premiums. However, the New York Times reported yesterday that these plans would make up for the lower premiums by charging deductibles as high as $15,000 for individuals and $31,000 for families, meaning that people on these plans would have to pay significant upfront costs should they get sick before getting any benefit from having insurance. Oh, see, ta-da! For perspective, the Times noted that these deductibles would be 8 times the average for someone with job-based insurance. Health experts who spoke with the Times were blunt about these plans' prospects for success. Nobody wants that product, Harvard health economist Amitabh Chandra said. It's going to be a really cheap product that nobody wants. Dr. Joseph Betancourt, president of the Commonwealth Fund, told the Times that the plans being mulled by the administration would push greater assumption of risk onto patients and away from insurers. There's no doubt that we have an affordability crisis, he said. As we move forward to shifting more of the burden to patients, there's a chance to really exacerbate the crisis. Catherine Hempstead, senior policy advisor for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, told the Times that the cheaper Trump plans are normalizing hardship and normalizing catastrophe by creating a form of health insurance that offers even less coverage than the cheapest plans available on the exchanges. The high deductible plans are being pushed by Medicare and Medicaid Administrator Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, who made headlines earlier this year by saying the goal of the Trump administration's healthcare policy was to have Americans be healthy enough so they could stay at work for at least an extra year before retiring. If we can get the average person to work one more year in their whole lifetime, just stay in your workplace for one more year, Oz said during an interview on Fox Business, that is worth about $3 trillion to the U.S. GDP. I don't know where the fuck he got that number. That sounds like some bullshit. It probably is. California Governor Gavin Newsom, who is widely expected to seek the presidency in 2028, pounced on the report about the high deductible plans. Trump's economic agenda is simple, Newsom wrote in a social media post: force hardworking families to pay more and give billionaires a tax break, even though they try to get billionaires to pay more in California, and he kind of stopped that. Johanna Maska, a former aide to President Barack Obama, expressed disbelief that this was Republicans' long-promised replacement plan for the ACA. A $31,000 deductible is unacceptable, she wrote. This is the Republican long-awaited plan. This is not health care that helps Americans. Well, had you, instead of passing Romney Care, the ACA, and it actually tried to at least started off with a public option, you probably wouldn't be in this shitty situation. But since you are, fuck you and your opinion. Meanwhile, guess what? Israel named top killer of journalists worldwide for 3rd straight year. They're not giving up that title. The Israeli military was directly responsible for 2/3 of the 129 journalists and media workers killed across the world in 2025, marking the highest annual toll in over 3 decades, as from the Committee to Protect Journalists announced on Wednesday. Yeah, it was Wednesday. CPJ said this was the 2nd consecutive record year for press fatalities, driven primarily due to the actions of one government, and argued that Israel's continued and unprecedented targeting of journalists and media workers has helped push killings to an all-time high. The report said at least 104 of the 129 journalists killed in 2025 died in war zones, adding that the majority were Palestinians killed by Israel. Of the 86 journalists and media workers killed by Israeli fire that year, more than 60% were Palestinians reporting from Gaza, where human rights groups and UN experts agree a genocide is taking place. CPJ stated that the Israeli army has committed more targeted killings of journalists than any other government's military since CPJ began documentation in 1992, and that it documented 47 cases of targeted killings in 2025, classified as murder, with Israel responsible for 81% of those cases. Journalists are being killed in record numbers at a time when access to information is more important than ever, CPJ CEO Jody Ginsburg said. Attacks on the media are a leading indicator of attacks on other freedoms, she said, adding that we are all at risk when journalists are killed for reporting the news. CPJ said very few transparent investigations have been conducted into targeted killings that documented in 2025, and that no one has been held accountable in any of those cases. Are you shocked? I'm not shocked that no one has been held to account. The CPJ report also pointed to the rise of drone attacks on press members, saying suspected and documented drone killings jumped from 2 in 2023 to 39 last year, including 28 by Israel's military in Gaza. CPJ cited the killing of Palestinian correspondent Hossam Shabbat on March 24th last year, saying he was blown up by an Israeli drone that directly targeted him, and that Israel accused him of being a Hamas sniper, Hamas, without providing credible evidence. An early report by the CPJ reported that Palestinian journalists detained in Israeli prisons have been subjected to systematic abuse, including rape, torture, starvation, and medical neglect. Based on interviews with 59 journalists, CPJ said all but one reported being subjected to what they described as torture, abuse, or other forms of violence, adding that the scale and consistency of these testimonies point to something far beyond isolated misconduct. Detainees described beatings, sexual violence, ghost hangings, and prolonged restraint in extreme conditions. One journalist said guards raped him in Megiddo prison. CPJ documented at least 94 journalists detained since October 2023, most held indefinitely without charge under administrative detention, with none prosecuted, saying the pattern exposes a deliberate strategy to intimidate and silence journalism. There's more here to it. You can read the rest, like I said, on Substack. We'll have that after the show. Very good. So finally, we got two more for you. Larry Summers to resign from Harvard after the Epstein files revelations. We can't have these Epstein files out here getting, it'll disrupt the system. Isn't that what Barbie doll said, Bondi? It'll destroy the system. Larry Summers, former president of Harvard University, will resign from teaching at the end of the academic year. A spokesperson confirmed to The Guardian the news of his formal resignation comes in connection with the ongoing review by the University of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein that were recently released by the government, a Harvard spokesperson, Jason Newton, said in a statement. Summers also resigned from his role as co-director of the Masavar Ramani Center for Business and Government at Harvard Kennedy School, a position he has held since 2011, according to the spokesperson. He will remain on leave until the end of the academic year, probably paid leave, because this is America and we protect those people. The news was first reported by the Harvard Crimson, the student newspaper. Summers, a renowned economist and former U.S. Treasury Secretary, announced in November 2025 he would stop teaching while the school conducted its investigation. In a statement shared with The Guardian, Summers acknowledged that the decision to leave was difficult. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I will always be grateful to the thousands of students and colleagues I have been privileged to teach and work with since coming to Harvard as a graduate student 50 years ago, he said. Free of formal responsibility as president emeritus and a retired professor, I look forward in time to engaging in research, analysis, and commentary on a range of global economic issues. Emails that were released by the U.S. House Oversight Committee in 2025 reignited questions about Summers' relationship with Epstein, who died allegedly in jail in 2019. Many of the messages indicated a friendship that lasted well into 2019. Contact only ended shortly before Epstein was arrested in July of that same year. Scrutiny of Summers, who was once a prominent voice in Democratic circles, has intensified over recent months. In addition to serving as Treasury Secretary in the Clinton administration, he also was director of the White House National Economic Council from January 2009 until November 2010, where he guided the Obama administration through the aftermath of the 2008 economic crisis. In the emails, Summers and Epstein muse on everything from politics and philanthropic endeavors to women. Summers confided in Epstein about pursuing a romantic relationship with someone who viewed him as an economic mentor. In one message from 2018, Epstein refers to himself as Summers' wingman. He also gives The Economist advice in a 2019 exchange about his romantic gestures being rebuffed. Yikes. Summers served as Harvard's president from 2001 to 2006. Epstein donated more than $9 million to Harvard and its affiliated programs between 1998 and 2008. Funny, while he was there, which overlapped with Summers' tenure. Epstein was also appointed a visiting fellow to conduct research in the university's Department of Psychology. The university later concluded Epstein lacked the academic qualifications visiting fellows typically possessed, and his application proposed a course of study Epstein was unqualified to pursue. But he had money to donate, so there you go. If you're into that sort of thing. Harvard stopped accepting Epstein's donations after he pleaded guilty to child sex offenses in 2008. Oh, really? And finally, CEO of World Economic Forum quits after Epstein ties comes to light. No one is safe. No one is safe. Unless you paid a lot of money, then, or unless you're like super rich, and you'll probably say the president and CEO of the World Economic Forum, Boris Brende, said he was stepping down a few weeks after the forum launched an independent investigation into his relationship with the late U.S. sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The allegedly late Brend, I don't know how you say that name, who became president of the WEF in 2017, announced his decision in a statement following disclosures from the U.S. Justice Department that showed the Norwegian had 3 business dinners with Epstein and had also communicated with the disgraced financier via email and text messages. After careful consideration, I've decided to step down as president and CEO of the World Economic Forum. My time here, spanning 8.5 years, has been profoundly rewarding, said Brend, a former Norwegian foreign minister. Issued by the WEF, the statement made no mention of Epstein. However, Brend told Norwegian media he was sorry about how he had handled his dealings with the American and that he did not want the issue to be a distraction for the forum, which organizes the annual Davos Summit. Don't worry, Epstein probably had dealings with all those other people too, so you're not the only one. Brenda's previously said he was unaware of Epstein's past. Yeah, I didn't know. And criminal activities before first meeting him in 2018, even though he was, in 2000. And then he regretted not having investigated him more thoroughly. Right. Brenda's decision to quit follows a series of revelations relating to Epstein, who in 2008 was convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor, the revelations of royal business and political elites, and even the British royal family. In their own statement, Andre Hoffman and Larry Fink, co-chairs of the Geneva-based WEF, Fink, well, that's a appropriate name, said an independent review conducted by outside counsel into Brend's ties with Epstein had concluded and had found no additional concerns beyond what has already been disclosed. Nothing to see here. Brend told Norwegian business daily Dagens Deringslev that while the review had not uncovered any previously unknown issues relating to Epstein, the case risked drawing attention away from the forum's work. Yeah. I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong. He said he regretted he had not been more open about the dinners and subsequent communications he had with him. Like many others, I have felt a great deal of discomfort at being linked to Jeffrey Epstein, and I was afraid that the contact would be portrayed as something other than what it was. That is the honest answer, Brent told the newspaper. Text messages from 2018 to 19 released among the Epstein files appears to show a friendly tone between the two men, with Bren calling Epstein a brilliant host and saying, "Missing you, sir," after a dinner with Epstein, former Trump aide Steve Bannon, and a former Norwegian government minister. Their last communication was a week before Epstein was arrested in 2019. So yeah, and there's more here. As I said, this is from Reuters. The links will be in the Substack. And if you want, you're like, where's your Substack, jerk face? Links are down below in the description if you want to check on that. Like I said, give me about an hour after the show. I'll have all the links up for you as we go. So yeah, the Epstein files, the gift that keeps on giving. Right now, not a lot of arrests, more embarrassing things for people. Which is not enough. We need justice. We need people arrested. And I don't think it's just Epstein either. I think there's other people involved. Maybe Epstein is being used as the focal point away from others. That's probably the case. We live in a corrupt, evil world, and we have to, we have to get justice. Otherwise, they're just going to keep doing the shit to us. Eat the bugs. What's up, Yonina? Good to see you. Yeah, it's all right. It's fine. This show's like 8 hours long anyway, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, so that's the newsy news for the day. Also want to remind you about our mutual aid and our folks that are in need of help. If you could help Aspen, Justice for Aspen, fighting legal bullshit down in Georgia, picked up with someone who was wanted for arrest. They ended up nabbing her too, so now she's having to deal with these legal issues. If you could help her out, and if you can't donate, if you can share out the links, all the links are down below. We appreciate that. Our buddy Chanda is still dealing with cancer. Of course, it's a long, treacherous fight, and of course it's an expensive fight too. We want to shout her out, and hopefully get her the funds for her treatment. Our buddy Cowboy Kitty, his sister-in-law, fighting deportation over bullshit charges from ICE. ICE is the gift that keeps on giving in that respect, and it's a gift you want to give back. So if you can help her out, we appreciate it. And of course, our buddy NoliDee, who dealt with a house fire, is trying to raise funds to make repairs, or if you can help her out, that would be great. And our buddy Kevin at Black Bear News, of course, his house totally destroyed in the LA fires. There's a cute little girl there too. That's his daughter, I believe. If you can help them out too, we appreciate it so much. And of course, later tonight, we do the twofer on Fridays here. You get your newsy news in the morning, and you get your dumb shit in the afternoons, or in the evenings rather. I guess that's what it is. When the sun goes down, that's called night, right? Yeah, that's right. Tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific time. It's a secret show, more dumb stuff. Tonight, we're kind of focusing, there's a couple of videos with voiceover actors, and some of the voices that you hear on YouTube and other places, they definitely, some of them don't match, their faces don't match the voice. It's kind of neat how that works out. So yeah, if you could join us tonight, that'll be fun. Good times, and it'll keep you off the streets. Unless you're watching it on the streets, then there's really nothing I can do to help you out with that. Finally, this morning, you have, I know people have personal license plates, and sometimes people try to be a little sneaky with them and try and sneak some little little naughties in there, and then the government said, nah, you can't do that bullshit, you gotta do that. So this wasn't naughty. I thought this was clever, and apparently some good news for somebody in New York here, as the governor steps in to save residents pee before we go. See, P before we go. License plate. P before we go. There it is. So, New York Governor Kathy Hochul stepped in to help a Long Island grandfather win his battle over a customized license plate reading P before we go. And that's a good grandpa, too. It's like, hey, you know, you might want to pee before we go. It's a long trip. And, of course, they don't pee, and then they get in the car, and about 10 minutes later, I got to go to the bathroom. You mother. Seth Bykofsky shared a photo of a letter he received from the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles in January telling him his P before we go plate, which he admits stands for P before we go, had been found to be in violation of the department's regulations. The DMV's rules prohibit vanity plates bearing messages that could be construed as derogatory, contemptuous, degrading, disrespectful, or inflammatory. Bykofsky argued his plate did not qualify. Derogatory, contemptuous, degrading, disrespectful. In all my years as a parent and now a grandparent, the worst I've gotten has been a gentle roll of the eyes from my kids and grandkids, he wrote on social media. Bykofsky joked he was going to run for governor as an independent. My campaign pledge, quite simply, is a P on every plate, knowing that if the state can come for my license plate, they can come for yours, he wrote. The controversy gained attention online, eventually reaching the current governor. Hochul posted a video to social media showing her phone conversation with Bykofsky, which featured the governor praising the plate as an important lesson. We'll get it back for you. I think everybody should be reminded to pee before you go, she said. I have kids and grandkids, and I support the effort wholeheartedly. Pee wholeheartedly. Bykofsky said he was satisfied with the outcome. In light of Governor Kathy Hochul restoring full rights and privileges to pee before we go, I am officially suspending my campaign for governor of the great state of New York, he wrote Tuesday. Thank you to all who supported this bold endeavor, both on behalf of the silly and absurd and in advance of our First Amendment right to freedom of expression. Basically, they told him initially that if he didn't remove the plate, they told him, quote, you're in trouble. What? You're still here? Willie Bragg. Willie, did you pee before you go? Good to see you, Willie. Did he pee first? Pee! I love some urine jokes. That's right. Don't whiz on the electric fence. Bring. Remember that? That was from Ren and Stimpy. Too soon? Thank you, everybody. That's it for the show. That's all we got. That's long enough, I think. Almost 2.5 hours. Again, yeah, I know. But you're in trouble. See? You get it because urine? See? Yeah, again, don't forget, secret show tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific time. Fun stuff, a lot of videos. We'll hang out. We got polls, stuff like that. Good times. And if anything, at least it'll give you something to do if you're bored. So that's the way we look at it. Other than that, I want to thank everybody that's watching on YouTube, and don't get pissed about that last story. Okay, don't be. Yeah. Come join us tonight. I'll be back again Wednesday at noon Eastern with Laine P for the Undercurrent news you can use there. And then this show will be back next week at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you, everybody on YouTube. Thank you on Rumble and on Facebook and Parts Unknown. We'll see you when we see you. Peace.
This is City Alpha 5. Woo!